For example 3, whenever you see the x value that needs to be plugged in, it gets plugged into every x value of the function we're working with. So for example, if I want to do 6f of 3, I want to first plug in 3 into the f function. I'm going to go to the f function here, and there's f. f of 3 is going to be 3 minus 4, so that x will turn into 3. Use parentheses around what the x value was, so parentheses 3 minus 4 divided by parentheses 3. That's what we're evaluating here. Now what that 6 is going to do at the end is multiply with it. So let's first start with what we're doing on this function here. Now you can do this by hand, of course. This is 3 minus negative 4, which is negative 1. And then we're dividing by 3. So negative 1 divided by 3 is just, negative 1 over 3, which you can leave as that. However, we do have a 6 being multiplied by that. So when I take that 6 into consideration, that 6 is going to times all that, which means everything here is going to be times by 6, which means we're doing 6 times negative 1/3, 6 times negative 1/3. And that's really the same as saying 6 divided by 3 with the negative. So 6 times negative 1/3 is 6 divided by 3. Well, what's 6 divided by 3? It's 2. So your answer is going to be negative 2. Here's what you can do on Desmos to help you with this answer. So we knew that it was 3 minus 4 divided by 3. But the problem is that on Desmos, it's going to only divide that second term. So to counteract that, what you're going to do is you're going to hit the slash. You see down where the shift bar is? You're going to hit the slash first, or you can go over here and you can hit divided by. Then we can put on the numerator parentheses 3 minus 4 and right arrow down to the denominator, and you can get 3. Now, of course, it's going to give me the decimal. You can click the fraction bar. It'll give you negative 1/3. If I want to times that by 6, then you can do 6 times all that if you want to do it all together, or you can take your previous answer and just say 6 times, so parentheses, negative 1 divided by 3, and you'll have your answer that way too. So the answer is, when it's said and done, negative 2, negative 2. I don't mind you using a calculator to evaluate this. So negative 2 would be your output for that. So if you would try g of negative 2, pause the video, see if you can follow those same steps and plug it into the g function for your x values for negative 2. When you write it, you're going to replace the x with the open parentheses and place the negative 2. It's kind of like I'm going to do negative 2 parentheses squared plus 3, and we're going to take that and just plug it right into there, okay? Now, that can all be done using your calculator if you want. You don't have to do mental math on this, but for order of operations sake, what you would do first is you would square the parentheses. So that's going to give you negative 2 squared, which is really negative 2 times itself, which is positive 4. Then you would multiply by the negative 2 because multiplication goes after parentheses and exponents. So 4 times negative 2 is negative 8. And then finally you add. So add 3 and you get negative 5. Let's check that in the calculator. All right, I'm going to put the Desmos on my phone just to make it easier to see what I'm doing. So negative 2, parentheses, negative 2 again, close the parentheses up. Now to square it, you can hit the a square button, but then you can say plus 3. If you're on your Chromebook, obviously it's a little bit easier to type it out, but that can be done just like that, and you can see the answer is going to be negative 5. So I'm not going to show the steps on that. You will get negative 5 as your output. All right, let's try C. This is 2h of negative 1. 2h of negative 1. So we want to plug in negative 1 into the h function. So these are absolute value. All right, I'll show you how to access those on the calculators. But if I want to know absolute value, then I basically you're going to take the negative away if it's a negative answer. First, though, let's plug in the -1. So the absolute value of 3 times -1 minus 5. Let me make those stand out a little bit more. And then you're going to have -1 at the end. So the -1 is going to get plugged in for the x. That's what this is right here. And we want to evaluate all of this. And then at the very end, we're going to take that 2 and multiply it by the entire expression. That's what we're doing in this problem. So I want to do what's inside first. And honestly, I can show you how to access the absolute value. Let's go back to Desmos here. We'll talk a little bit more in the next unit about what absolute value means. But for right now, let's just make sure we can input it. So the absolute value bars are here. It's the vertical bars. On your keyboard, if you're typing on your keyboard, it's going to be, if you hold Shift and hit this button here, that's going to be the absolute value as well. So I'm going to type in 3 parentheses -1, and then -5. And then I'm going to go on the outside of the absolute value. So I'll click over here, right arrow if you're on your computer. Then you're going to type in -1 at the end. And so that's going to give us an answer of 7. So I'm going to write 7 down below. And then finally, at the end here, I got 2 times all that. So this really is going to be 2 times 7, which hopefully you know is 14. You can check that in your calculator if you'd like. So 2 times 7 is 14. Try this one here. This is the square root function. I'll see if you can find that first on your calculator without me going over it. So just pause the video and try, and then I'll go over how to do that. To square root a function, you got to think about what number times itself is going to get you an answer and work backwards. So when I'm doing the function, I'm going to treat the square root like a group, and I'm going to do what's inside of them first. This is the square root of 19 minus 3, which is 16. And if you know the square root of 16, it's basically what number times itself is going to give you 16. That number is going to be 4. If you didn't know that, you can use your calculator. I'll show you both on the TI-84 and Desmos. So on TI-84, the square root function is second x squared. And then you can plug in the 19 and right arrow out of there, and you can get 4. On here, on Desmos, you would just go into the calculator function, hit that square root symbol, and I'm going to do the 19 here. -3, and there's your 4 for your output. All right, the last examples are going to be more composition, again, plugging one function into the other and seeing your output. So bear with me, we'll do a couple together, and then I'll have you try the last 2. When I'm doing g of p of 12, again, I want to focus on what's in here first. I want to look at the inside first and do that. So p of 12, we just did the p function. That's going to be the square root function. So p of 12 is the square root of 12 minus 3. Well, 12 minus 3 is 9, okay? So the square root of 9 is going to be, use your calculator if you'd like, but the square root of 9 is 3. Once you have that answer, that is going to now be inputted into the g function. So once you've done p of 12, you got your initial output, that's going to be plugged in to the outside function, so g of 3. So I want to go over here and find the g function, which is up here, -2x squared. And I'm going to write -2 parentheses 3, don't forget the squared, plus 3. Just keep in mind that what we get initially for the inside function is not your answer. It's going to get used as the input for the outside function. So evaluate -2 parentheses 3, close parentheses squared, plus 3. And since we'll be using these in class, I'll show you how to use it on here as well. You're going to hit the negative button that's down here. Don't hit the minus, hit the negative. and then parentheses, excuse me, no parentheses on that, 2, then parentheses, 3, close parentheses, hit the x squared button, and then do plus 3. Negative 2 times 3 squared plus 3. And that gets us negative 15. So your final answer is negative 15 for part E. Let's do part F so you can see one more together like that. F of negative 1 is what we'll do first. So f is the initial function up there. We're going to plug in negative 1 where the x's are. So I'll use the Desmos calculator on here. What we'll do on Desmos, if I want to plug that in without thinking about it, is I'll hit the division bar first. And then I'll do negative 1. I'm going to leave off the parentheses. They're not really necessary for this type of function. And you're going to see negative 1 minus 4 is negative 5 divided by negative 1 is positive 5. So our output for negative 1 into the f function is 5. Next, we're going to take that 5, and that's going to be our new input for the h function. So the h function is over here, absolute value. So h of 5. And that's going to give us absolute value of 3 times 5 minus 5. And then outside the absolute value is minus 1. So that 5 gets plugged into here, which becomes this x value right there, 5. So let's plug that in. So the absolute value bars are, again, right here. You do 3, parentheses 5, close parentheses, minus 5. Go outside the absolute value bars and hit minus 1. And your answer is going to be 9. The absolute value of 3 times 5 minus 5 minus 1 is equal to 9. That's the whole thing. All right, if you want to try these two, you can pause the video, I'll work them out, and you can check my solutions. All right, the answer for G is 0. Plugging in 0 for the h function gives me 3 times 0 minus 5. And the absolute value, that's negative 5, which is positive 5 if you take the negative off. And then minus 1 gives you 4. Next, we're going to take that output 4, and we're going to plug it into the f function. So 4 is going to get plugged into those x's. 4 minus 4 is 0, and 0 divided by anything is going to be 0. So your answer is going to be 0. All right, pause it again, try letter H. All right, for letter H, my answer is also 0. Here's how you get it. First, I'm going to do G of 0. I'm going to plug in 0 into this function here. And when I plug in 0 into x squared, negative 2 times 0 squared, that part ends up being 0. And adding 3 gives you 3. You can verify that into your calculator. And there you go for that portion of it. Next thing, we're going to do the 3 plugged into here, the square root function. So P of 3, that's my new input now, since I got an answer for the top one being 3, is going to be the square root of 3 minus 3. You can do the square root by doing second, again, hitting the x squared button, bringing up the square root, or on your calculator on Desmos, you can find the square root button right over here and do it that way. But anyway, you get 3 minus 3 in there, that's 0. The square root of 0 is still going to be 0. And so your answer is going to be 0. And so that concludes the plugging into functions example 3. Our last example is just going to go with transforming functions and seeing what happens in the graph if you shift them left, right, up, or down, or stretch them or compress them. Thanks for watching.